All right. Okay, can you start, Diane?
Yes.
Dear Macedonians and Americans, today I have an opportunity to talk to the independent candidate for the United States of America Senate. That is Diane Sare. Diane, good evening to you in the United States, and good afternoon from Australia.
Thank you. Good afternoon to you.
It is my pleasure to talk to you about your candidacy to go with for the Senate as an independent candidate. Behind you, there are not the Democrats, they are not the Republicans, but your counter or your opponent is Chuck Schumer. Chuck Schumer has been in the Senate of the United States for 42 years. For 42 years, how are you gonna defeat him?
Well, the most important thing is to defeat his policy. He's actually been in Washington 42 years, 18 in the House and 24 in the US Senate. And he has been very proud of securing the funding for every war. I have watched videos of him bragging how he got $87 billion to pay for the invasion of Iraq in 2003. And now he is leading the charge to get billions of dollars sent to Ukraine. And he threw a rage fit when Senator Rand Paul said, I want an auditor, we should have an inspector general to see if the money is going where it's supposed to go. Now, I don't think we should be sending money to arm Ukraine at all, and we should not be involved in this conflict. But at any rate, Schumer is a warmonger, and he is a stooge for Wall Street. And if he has his way, I'm afraid our nation is heading toward nuclear war, either with Russia or China. He is also very, very anti-China.
Okay, reading your program for the Senate for the people that are going to vote for you, you have said that you're going to challenge the hyperinflation and printing money in the United States.
That's right. Now, you should know I'm on the ballot under the name LaRouche, who was the greatest economist perhaps ever, who passed away 3 years ago. And he warned for many years, since the 1950s even, that if you shut down your manufacturing and industry and you just print money, that you are headed for a collapse. And we are really at the end. The United States is in a complete physical breakdown. Whenever it rains, we have floods, we have people losing their electricity for relatively small weather problems, we have drought. We are looking like a less developed nation might have looked 50 years ago. I mean, it's really very bad, but the stock market is at a record high. So if you keep printing money to bail out things that have no value, then your money becomes worthless. And the price of food, the price of energy is out of control. And it's not because of Putin. So what I'm saying is we should stop bailing out these billionaire crooks. We do not have to save Wall Street. We don't have to save the city of London. We do have to, it's in the Constitution of the United States, to promote the general welfare. We have to, the government has to use its resources to defend the people of the United States, not some Wall Street crook.
And supporting Ukraine and the war in Ukraine, your media in the United States always they say that Vladimir Putin is losing the war. However, the United States are sending a lot of money instead of to use them for the infrastructure or for your inflation, to drop down the inflation.
Well, for a guy who's losing the war, he somehow just recruited a large chunk of what used to be Ukraine to become part of the Russian Federation. And it wasn't by force, but because the Ukrainian government, I mean, frankly, I should say this war is really not between Ukraine and Russia. This war is between NATO and Russia, the US and the UK versus Russia. And President Biden made that very clear. He said the objective is to destroy Russia. So that's the American objective. And Ukraine, we found it expedient to support Nazi fascist elements in Ukraine who go back to the legacy of Stepan Bandera, whom they treat as a great hero, who massacred hundreds of thousands of people, Jews, Poles, Russians. And to this day now, people march around on his birthday at the beginning of January with torches and pictures of him. People should imagine what they would think if everyone in Germany started marching around behind pictures of Adolf Hitler. You wouldn't consider it acceptable, but that's what's going on in Ukraine. And we are using that to get the war going. And I have to say, the people in Ukraine are suffering terribly. I received messages from people, and Scott Ritter, the former UN weapons inspector, has described this, that if you don't agree with the Zelensky regime, or if you even take a food package from the Russians, they will accuse you as being a collaborator, and you can be beaten, tortured, and even killed. So it is a totalitarian fascist regime that we have instigated to have a war with Russia, which was completely avoidable.
What is the interest of the United States to be on the border of Russia? Say, for example, NATO, led by the United States from Finland, the Baltic countries, down to Romania, Poland, and Hungary, Bulgaria. So, Russia is practically surrounded from the United States. And how the United States will react if, say, for example, Mexico is under control of or full with nuclear heads, Cuba, or say Canada. How the United States will react in that case?
Well, that's something I ask my American friends all the time. And I have to say, the leadership of the United States would not nearly have been as patient as President Putin, who has given us many opportunities to stop behaving so aggressively, which we have ignored. So I think the United States would respond as we saw with President Kennedy. Unfortunately, we do not have a President Kennedy in the White House. We have someone who I think is very mean-spirited and also is showing signs of dementia, and really should not be in the White House at this moment.
Okay, I've got a couple more questions for you, and we're going to end up our interview. I'm interested about your opinion, because the United States government is using the taxpayers' money, and they supporting European Union, they're supporting NATO, but also on the other hand, when they invaded or attacked Yugoslavia '99, Iraq, and now probably Iran and the other Middle East countries, everything was legal for them. But now when Russia is protecting their interests, so it is illegal. How would the American people react, or how they reacting on this. As I said, I could say the United States media is one-sided.
Well, this is what the British call the rules-based order. And what they mean when they say rules-based order is we make the rules and we can change them whenever we want, and you do whatever we say. And if you don't do what we say, we will overthrow your government, we will put sanctions, we will starve your people, and we will bomb you. It is arbitrary, capricious, and it really violates natural law. And I don't think it's going to be able to continue this way for much longer. And for the record, I have to say that the action that Putin took vis-a-vis Ukraine had much more justification than our invasion of Iraq based on a known lie of weapons of mass destruction that did not exist. Putin was explicit. He said what the legitimate security demands of Russia were. The US and NATO ignored that, not only ignored it, but willfully violated exactly what he said were inviolable conditions.
Okay, in your program, or I have read that you have tendency about Russia, China, India creating a new world order.
Right.
Can you explain?
Well, look, yeah, we're up against a bunch of billionaires when formerly Prince, now King Charles, and I can barely get the words out of my mouth, it's so reprehensible. But when King Charles talks about global Britain, what he's referring to is a group of bankers who brag that they had $140 trillion to impose their green agenda, shut down fossil fuels, shut down food production, drop dead, basically. Now, if you're going to defeat a bunch of bankers with that kind of war chest, you need the largest nations to work together. So the United States and China have to be on the same side. And that's why they are making such an effort to divide the US and China. The propaganda against China in the United States is suffocating. It's terrible. Interestingly, many Americans have not been fooled by the propaganda against Russia, but the anti-Chinese propaganda is really bad. Maybe because there's more racism, I'm not sure, but it's really bad and people tend to believe it. So if the US, Russia, and China work together, then we can put this system through bankruptcy reorganization. I have to say now, I think the difficult part of that is that for very legitimate reasons, the leadership of those nations would have a hard time to trust the United States. We have not demonstrated ourselves to be a very trustworthy partner. And I really would appeal to my fellow Americans to consider how our nation is viewed in the rest of the world, because we will be crippled by the lack of trust that we have brought on ourselves, and that really has to change. But I think that we could begin some projects, for example, the development and reconstruction of the nation of Haiti, where you have horrible starvation. We could work together to rebuild Afghanistan and create a modern healthcare system in that country. There might be some things that the big nations could do together to begin to reestablish trust and to reestablish proper relations among countries.
What's you gonna say about the northern trade? Was it the pipeline?
Nord Stream 1 and 2.
Was it sabotage from the United States or Russia, UK, Germany? What is your opinion?
I think we can rule out Russia because they have a lot of skin in the game. They built the pipeline. They need the pipeline, it's leverage over Europe. It would make no sense whatsoever for Russia to do it. We also have the famous quote of Joe Biden from February 7th of 2022, where he said that if Russia invades Ukraine, Nord Stream 2 will stop. And when the reporter asked him, what do you mean? He said, I don't have to answer, but it will stop. It will not go forward. So Biden, after saying that, I think has some explaining to do. I think there should be a full investigation, which the Russians should be at the center of, to find out who did what. I'm also suspicious now of Sweden because their Navy apparently was doing things in the area and now they're refusing to cooperate. They're saying that they have information about what happened, but they're not going to share it because it's national security. So it was NATO countries. We know very few nations have the capability of the drones and the explosives required. So I'm almost 100% certain that the United States played the leading role in this, maybe at the instigation of the British, because the British love to control what the United States does.
I've got two more questions. The last one will be the most important one for me and for you. I would like to ask you your opinion about the stand of the United States over Macedonia. They recognized Macedonia under its constitutional name in 2004, but after that they forced us to rename the country from Macedonia to North Macedonia. And now slowly in the world, we're getting our name as people, North Macedonians. And how do you see the two faces or multi-faces stand of United States towards a very small locked up country like Macedonia?
I'm glad you're bringing this up because I was actually wondering why it suddenly was called North Macedonia. What was the rationale that the United States gave for that? That seems very peculiar to me.
Okay, so
did they have an excuse? I mean, I saw the name change, but why did they say they were doing that?
Oh, look, they wanted to satisfy the Greek government because Greece has occupied 51% of the Macedonian land. And we have an agreement with Greece that we have given up on the Macedonian minority in Greece. So they are they're not allowed to speak Macedonian to maintain the Macedonian language like in the United States we speak. We have churches and or in Australia, but in Greece we're not allowed. But also now we have a lot of difficulties with one of the European Union's countries, but like Greece is as well European Union country. So they say that we have been created as a nation, as a people since 1946. And before that, we were Bulgarians, or we were nothing, or the Comintern, the Comintern, 1934, they created like imaginative nation.
Right. Well, one thing I would like to give warning to the Greeks that they should look at what's happened to Ukraine, because I know that Greece is being used as a transshipment point for a lot of American weapons going into Ukraine. And I'm afraid that the Greeks may be fooled into thinking that the United States will back them if they wish to expand or do other. They should not make the mistake of thinking they're going to be aided. And I think that there is a game being played of divide and conquer, because Macedonia is in a very important region strategically. It's a crossroads between many nations. And it would be in the interest of the British, the divide and conquer game, to keep strife and division and not allow the nation to develop and to become part of a broader whole, like the Silk Road, and I think mankind really has to grow up in a way. We so easily seem to fall into small disputes as opposed to recognizing that our diversity would allow us to collaborate on a shared mission in a way that we wouldn't if we did not have that respect for each other. So I think the sovereignty of Macedonia has to be respected. And I think that there is also a question of, Xi Jinping talks about the shared vision of a common destiny or something like that. We have to realize that our planet is really not that big in the scope of the universe. So we should figure out how we can work together to do things that benefit the whole human race. But you are in a very strategic location. If someone wants to have a button to push to create a great deal of conflict, and I think that's a factor in what's happened there.
Okay, for me, the most important question for you is the debate on the 30th of October. So the elections are on the 8th of November. So you have a lot of obstacles then to promote your program, and you've got a lot of obstacles. As I could see, become interested about your campaign, and so why do you have a lot of obstacles, and why Chuck Schumer is afraid of you to debate against you?
Well, because I think that my campaign gives voice to what most Americans want. Americans don't want a nuclear war. They don't believe our mission is to destroy other countries. They realize we are suffering at home with the hyperinflation you brought up earlier. And therefore, they don't want my voice in the debate. Now, this is not like some races in some European countries where you have many, many parties and many, many candidates. This is an election where there are 3 candidates: myself, the Republican Party candidate, and Schumer, the Democratic Party candidate. So what is the argument that they have to keep me out of the debate, especially when, for me to get on the ballot, I had to submit 45,000 signatures of registered New York voters. I turned in 66,000 signatures, which indicates, and I'm the only one in the state who did this. No one else did it, and it's the first time because they made this new crazy requirement. So I have demonstrated that I have broad support all over the state, and it's not me that they're excluding, it's the 66,000 people who signed the petition saying that I should be running. And I really appreciate this interview because I want the Americans to know that people from all over the world are looking. Here is the United States torturing countries because we accuse them of not being democratic. And then you have a situation here where a candidate such as myself is given 0 time in the mainstream press. The New York Times even called my office to interview me. They talked to my campaign manager for an hour, and then they wrote an article which did not mention me or the campaign once. It's that big of a blackout. So the debate is supposed to be October 30th, sponsored by Spectrum News. And actually, I would urge people to go and look up Spectrum News wherever you are in the world and send them an email or call them and say, why are you excluding Diane Sare? Is Schumer afraid? Is the United States becoming a little bit undemocratic? We all believe in democracy, don't we? I think we should really rub it in.
But if it's a democracy, you should have been in, but not out. And another thing is, yes, we can see from what they're doing to you, they do to other people, and also they're policing the world. But we say United States is a democratic country.
Yes.
And
That was
Diane,
the rumor.
yes, Diane, do you think you're gonna get a chance to participate in the debate?
Yes, I do actually, because I have no intention of accepting this. And I think that they should be very ashamed of this. And I know that already from the phone calls that there is some interest now in my candidacy. And I'm getting interviewed by people from all over the world. I just got an email before we got on that a prominent journalist in Mexico is going to be interviewing me. I did an interview with someone in the UK this morning. I was on an Italian news service. I'm going to put a spotlight of the world on the United States, because if we conduct ourselves this way here, I don't think anyone in other countries should listen to us. And I appreciated very much when our Secretary of State Blinken went to South Africa, the foreign minister of South Africa sitting, and he went there to tell her, don't work with Russia. You're not allowed to work with Russia. So she gave a joint press conference with him, and she said very publicly with Blinken there, she said, in South Africa, we do not like being bullied by other nations, and you are not, other nations, she didn't say you, she said other nations are not going to tell us with whom we may have relations and not. And I think that's an excellent spirit, and I would like to encourage everybody in the world to tell the government of the United States, if you don't start acting like grown-ups instead of 3-year-olds in a sandbox with a nuclear bomb, that we are not going to do what you say, and you should conduct yourself with the standards that you claim to be upholding and demanding that other nations uphold.
So then the last one, your message to the Macedonian community, huge Macedonian community in United States.
Well, I think we should work together. I'm actually, we had Nestor Oganor was here earlier, who is a wonderful person and gives me a sense of really a tremendous culture that I think can make a great contribution to the melting pot of the United States. So I'm very interested to get to know the community more, learn how we can work together in New York and to make the United States a better place and make the world a better place.
Thank you very much, Diane, and I wish you all the best. And my invitation is open whenever you are available. I know you are very busy now, but I would like to have another interview before the elections.
Great. Well, thank you so much. Thank you very much for having me. And I thank Nestor also, even though he wasn't able to join us this time.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye.